happy to call the meeting to order.
Thank you. All right, looks like we're recording now. So,
Great. Thanks. Daniela added in the chat that she is traveling and keeping her camera off, but thanks for joining us.
well, Zan, then if you'd be so kind as to call us to order, we can get started.
Good morning. I'll call this meeting of the Strategy Committee of the Youth Development Council and Office to on February 26th at 10:35 a.m.
Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. Cord Bucher for the record. Good morning. We've got about an hour here today and a few things on our agenda. And so I will follow the order of what we've got on the agenda. Right before this, we're discussing the fact that one of our goals was to potentially identify a committee chair who would potentially do what I'm doing now, which is tell us what we're going to do today. But we'll do that later. I think, the last item on the agenda. And so the first thing we've got is we wanted to give an update to everyone on our strategic plan and strategic plan priorities and things that are kind of emerging, we think, as the priorities for the year ahead. And we wanted to share that with you all and get feedback. Um, Melissa, would you be so kind as to pop the slideshow up? And we can just go to, I think, the third slide.
Sorry, I thought it was already sharing. Can you see it now?
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
So if we go to the next slide, I'll just kind of quickly bring folks up to speed. I think everyone was at the retreat. So um, we shared some progress at the retreat in November on what were the priority projects from the strategic plan. So a few things were done. Pretty much all of them were in progress. And several I think are still underway and actually return for the sort of list of priorities that we wanted to share today. So we started work on a few projects at the retreat and some of the retreat activities and breakout sessions. And some of those I think are really emerging as things that we see as a big part of our work in the year ahead. And so staff have been working on developing an updated list of priority projects for 2026. And yeah, we want to extend that momentum from the retreat. And of course, some of this is influenced by work that we know needs to happen, emerging needs, and the timelines that we had kind of developed when we were putting together the strategic plan. So if we go to the next slide, I've got a list. Um, so I wanted to share this list with folks and get feedback. These are the things that we think make sense as kind of our priorities for the year ahead. Um, I'll go through these really quickly. So council member recruitment, I think, is going to be something we know we need to work on. We've got some required positions that we're working on recruiting for. Um, we also have just getting out of order. There's a youth member recruitment project as well, which I think is also something that aligns with that. And so, recruiting both general YDC members and youth members are things that we see as a priority for the year ahead. Um, there was one thing in here that we're going to talk about later today that was not in the original strategic plan, but came up at the retreat. And that was really some desire on the part of, I think, a few council members, particularly new folks, for messaging tools, for elevator pitch, for just things that can help us to talk about who we are, what we do in a really clear and succinct way. We have been doing some work on that since it came up in November, and want to also work on it today with you all. And I've added it to the tracker. It's not, I guess I've tracked it as a new project since it wasn't in the original strategic plan, but it does align with one of the strategies, which was just around awareness and understanding of youth development Oregon. So one of the things that I think is true for a few of these priorities is that um, the things that we had in the plan are maybe a step beyond some fundamental things that we have to work on. And I think before we even get to some of the more specific goals around certain folks that we want to connect with or engage, in building awareness. How we just even talk about what we do seems like a good step to take. So that's one that I think is a priority right now. Um, we've got there was a pretty broad strategy around partner engagement of a number of different agencies for alignment. We've heard from ADPC at the retreat, and we've continued working with Wes and that ADPC, or Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission, really around just better understanding how our programs are aligned with their goals around prevention, treatment, and recovery from substance use issues. And so we're doing some work with them right now to share data and looking at ahead, it might be things that we are better able to identify through our reporting and our grant making as services that our programs are either delivering or partnering to make available to youth. Um, the OJJDP Title II federal funds require a new 3-year plan, and part of that is probation reform work. This was something that's been on the horizon, and now as we've completed the juvenile detention guidelines, I think this will be the next piece of work that the Juvenile Justice Committee is digging into. Um, there was and these are all sort of paraphrases. In the following slides, I've got the detailed information from our strategic plan tracker, but there was something I'm calling community violence resource assessment, really trying to identify where our grants are addressing community violence affecting youth, where the gaps may be, and some work that we had wanted to do around that, as well as revamping the youth violence and gang prevention grant, which, as I think folks know, has been on hold since we anticipated we could experience some funding reductions. As we're getting near the end of this session, we don't yet know. But we are trying to prepare for the possibility that we do have funds. And so we've kind of picked the work back up on that grant, and we're going to be bringing some stuff to the council at the council meeting in March. And so I think that these two, number 5 and 6, around just assessing needs around community violence resources for youth and a revamped grant to that end, are things that we see as emerging in the year ahead as priorities in our grant making side. Mentioned youth-led YDC youth member recruitment, um, youth-led grant making. We had, I think, a pretty robust conversation at the retreat. I know there's going to be a presentation on this to the council in March as well, and this is something that our newest hire, Sally Deck, has been working on. Paul Sell as well, along with members of the youth committee. And so we'll be providing an update on that, but that's also something that we identified as a priority that's really in focus right now. And then data collection and reporting cycle and timeline. This is another project where what we had in the plan is, I think, a couple of steps beyond where we need to go first, which is and work with Molly Burns, who's here in the meeting, and Bill Hansel, who are the folks that are most focused on our data collection, reporting from our grants to then report to the council. We're working on trying to develop a regular reporting cycle. So when we do the work of
Good.
compiling data, analyzing it, cleaning it, when we are reporting that to council, all the different types of data that we report, really trying to put together a steady workflow so that once we have that, then we know where the opportunities are for us to share data back with both the council as well as other stakeholders, the grantees who provide us the data, et cetera. And then the last one here is strengthening our convening and community conversation participation. This is something that has been ongoing in terms of the re-engagement and now job and work readiness grants that are convening regularly, and how we're involving more grantees in those convenings. And as we plan for community engagement in the year ahead, trying to also make sure that we are involving our grant recipient programs in those community outreach efforts and making sure they know when we're coming to town and they're able to participate in that in a more active way. So this is the list of, again, priorities that we have identified based on things that we are working on, things that came up in the retreat, things that we kind of know will be necessary for us to look at in the year ahead. There are 2 more slides that are really the more detailed sort of snapshots of these from the strategic plan tracker. If you can kind of move through it, Melissa, but I want to go ahead and pause and then each there's broken into two just because there's a lot of text. So there's four here and I think six on the next page. And I wanted to I'll pause and give folks a chance to kind of react to what we've put in front of you in terms of these proposed priorities for the year. I see
Great.
Brian's reaction. Thank you.
Ready for the next one?
Sure, I think we can go to the next one. And I think I lost the header, but the the you see the strategy, we've got strategy numbers, the strategy that these projects are a part of, the project number, and that project description that was in the original plan. Where necessary, I've kind of added some notes that maybe clarify the part of the project we're working on, or in some cases, just kind of connect it with something else here. Oh, and the yes means that it was a priority in the original set. So there are some things here that were priorities in 2025. Um, and that heading is missing, I just realized. But if it says yes, that just means that this was something that we had identified early on. We're still working on it. And we think this year it's going to be another thing that will still be a priority. And if it's easier to see the full list, Melissa, if you go back two slides, the whole list is there, kind of the truncated version. And then I can just sort of share like some of the questions that I have in the slide that follows this. I'm just asking how these land for you. Are there any that you're particularly excited about? Things here that you're like, oh, I want to support this or be a part of this work. Um, or are there things that you don't see that you're like, hey, like don't forget about X. Either we want to ensure we also pay attention to this in the year ahead.
Mm.
I'm going to add those in the chat because now we just want to discuss, right, Cord?
Yes.
Hey Cord, it's Parsa here. Really appreciate the overview of what's being proposed for 2026. For me, I think it'll also be helpful for things that are continuing from our previous strategic plan, just having a quick note of like where we last left on that work stream of work and sort of progress to date. Um, and then for any specific priorities that we accomplished and met our milestones on, I think that would be great to summarize in some sort of public document as well, as we do this next iteration. Um, that's something I think could be really helpful as we talk about our work, right? What we made progress on, what we might be pausing and refining a bit further. And I also think that helps tell the story, right, of work that has happened to date.
Thanks, Parasa. Yeah, I actually was looking back at the December council meeting deck, and some of that's in there, and I kind of deliberately didn't include it because I was like, well, folks may have seen this and it might feel redundant, but I appreciate that like that is helpful as sort of context for why certain things are not, or either done or have just sort of receded from prioritization. And I think I'm going to have to provide an update to the full council, and I can bring that back in. Um, but I think that I can share both. I mean, I think that at the retreat, he talked broadly about just how many projects were started and how many were completed, and we can update those just kind of high level numbers. But then I can also bring in the priorities from the initial plan adoption and provide kind of updates on all of those as well, just for that context. That's not a problem to do.
Thanks, Cord. Yeah, I think that could be really valuable, especially for newer council members, folks coming onto the council for the first time as well, and just kind of seeing that history, and how we've continued to refine and and um, and show that work.
Definitely. Thanks for that.
Cord Zan here. I think that the one thing that would be useful for me is I'm not sure what dictated the order you put these in on your grid, but if we were to group them, because some of them are very complementary to one another, it might be helpful. And it looks like a lot, and I think grouping them in some way might help to understand the coherence across the different things that we're trying to do.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. And thanks, Parsa, for seconding that. I think that's doable. The order is really just kind of how things fall in the plan, and essentially pulling them out of a big grid where all of the projects are being tracked. Um, I'm actually trying to figure out a way to. What I've noticed with the sharing is that it kind of requires everyone to request access and a little bit of like technical manipulation. I think that what might be easier is to just print the full strategic, there's an implementation tracker with everything in the plan. And we haven't published that. It's been more of an internal tool that I've used to kind of organize things. But that order is just, I wouldn't say arbitrary, but it follows the strategies. But for example, there are youth focused strategies that align with council focused strategies. And there are other areas where I think as I look at these, I could see a couple of places to your point where we could probably have some combined um, or a combination of these into sort of a more focused goal, and it would reduce the number, which would be helpful. So I think for what I maybe propose, and if this sounds good to the committee, is that I could, in the update to the council in March, bring back in kind of a sort of status report. And I think we could continually provide that whenever we're providing the full council with updates on the plan. Um, Sort of just going back and talking about the priorities that we had, where those are all at, which ones are carrying forward, and linking it to these kind of proposed priorities, and probably could reorganize this a bit to make it a little bit more concise and a little more clear for folks. Hey, Brian, I see your hand.
Hey, Cord. Hey, good morning, everybody. Brian Detman, Youth Development Oregon Director. For the record, I'm, I think I think these do have some groupings which we can share. But Zan, I'm just sort of reflecting on your comment. It, I it I don't know that 10 feels like too many, but maybe that's a conversation to have. But I think these are, yes, there's relationships between them. And I think the broader plan shows that. There's, I don't, maybe potentially maybe a little overlap, but hopefully not much. Like we tried to in this just give you like, here's the 10. Here are like 10 things that we're working to make happen. So I'm a bit hesitant to try to either reduce or combine things unless they really can be. And maybe Cord and Zant, maybe others, there's things that are there are ways to combine. But I do like these are 10, they feel like distinct things that we're trying to say, hey, we will report on progress. We will tell you how we're doing. Here are the things that are happening. And again, the deeper plan has the interconnections and relationships, but you see there are various grant related items on here. So there are probably three or four of them. So, but they don't they exist in the structure of the plan, right? But not necessarily in the structure of our operations. So I don't know, Dan, I'm just talking through like if you have more thoughts, yeah, jump in.
No, understood. I guess it all depends on audience and whether it's just an internal working or whether we're sharing this with outside
Hmm.
folks.
Hmm.
These are all um, kind of activities with specific outcomes. And yes, they are grouped by larger um, uh, uh, goals in the overall plan structure. And we didn't present the overall goals here. And so, mm, just trying to think through being able to have that multidimensional space in the presentation or in my head. Um, and maybe we can just color code them by those areas or something that just conveys a little bit of that other information. Um, and I'm just cognizant of the fact that there are a limited number of people doing this work. And I think there's a lot of complementarity in some of the objectives, and don't want to lose sight of the fact that yes, they're discrete outcomes, but we can, by getting one done, we can get partway to another.
Thanks,
Is
Sam.
Anna, I
Yeah.
think I could probably, I think if not combining, at least grouping these might help them to read better. And I think it is, I mean, with an hour today, I was like, what can I do with this to sort of get through it and still be able to get to the next topic? But the plan is it's there's a lot of density. I mean, there's a bunch of different strategies, there's numerous projects, and how it all fits together is, I think, hard sometimes when we just extract a little bit. So I appreciate that. And I think it's helpful for me just to think through like what is a way to present this where it might just be a little bit more digestible, and to try to help folks to see back to how it connects to the plan as a whole. Um, and is there a way to do that without having everyone look at really dense tables?
I see Nate has a comment, Cord.
Oh, hey Nate.
Hey there. Hello, everyone. Nate Latanzio, council member here. Sorry, I'm joining this conversation a little late, but I think I have an understanding of kind of where we're at. And I was just going to just share my 2 cents in that, like, I mean, as long as we have capacity to make meaningful progress in all 10 of these, I'm like, okay, great. Then we can do it. Then we're just saying, hey, we're working on all 10 of these. That's great. And then, like, in terms of groupings, I love the idea for like color coding and like, I don't know if it would be as simple as this, but like just based off like me just reading this of okay, if it's a council member recruitment strategy, if the YDL elevator pitch and talking points is to like support recruitment, I could see that being like a sub bullet point. And same with like the youth led YDC youth member recruitment. And I was like, yeah, that kind of falls within that. So I could see like kind of grouping it in that way and saying like, hey, these are all things that we're talking about specifically. Cause it's like I think it would be good. Like if we were like if, for example, we combine like the youth-led YDC youth member recruitment with the council member recruitment strategy, I could see folks being like, well, what about like is there going to be like specific things around youth engagement, or are we only looking at the broad council? And even if it's just a sub bullet point, I think it helps demonstrate that yeah, that is on our radar. That's going to be a part of what we're working on within this. Um, oh, and then just one question that I had too: are these rated like as the 1 through 10 by priority? So it's like the number one is the first one, because otherwise I could see it like maybe if we did bullet points too, that could help. I think the 1 through 10 can kind of convey priority, not always, but it can.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nate. Yeah, I, what they're not, the numbering is arbitrary. I do wonder, would it help to also sort of see what strategy in the plan these things relate to? So, for example, like the elevator pitch or the messaging is really connected to a specific strategy. Like in terms of expanding awareness and understanding of YDO, that is the project that I think, is the step we take towards that overall strategy. And in a couple of cases, there's more than one priority project here that relates to the same strategy. But I think like saying, hey, this project is leading towards something higher level within our plan. I wonder if that also would be useful context. Just it's like, why are we doing this thing? Well, it's really to move this bigger thing forward. And I think, to your point as well, like maybe there are some that really connect more clearly, and we could probably find a way to show that, connect to each other, I should say.
I like that idea of like seeing how they tie to the specific strategies within the it essentially just kind of like get an idea of like the roadmap. I'm trying to think of like, okay, presentation, if we're presenting this, I think visually, I think there probably need to be some sort of like visual that goes with that, like arrows connecting something, or if it's like the 1 through 10 here, maybe it specifically says after it in smaller text or italics, like what are the strategies that it's tied to, or some way of conveying it, because the tough thing is with 10 of them there will be that's a ton of information all in one place, but we could break it apart and do several slides for it too, because that could also be a thing.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Uh, I guess in the interest of maybe, I think next steps, I'll take all this feedback and I think try to refine this to share with the council. It doesn't sound like there's anything here that, I mean, everything except for one were already projects in the plan. And I don't get the sense there's anything that feels like out of step. It seems like folks generally see these as all, if we can do all of this, it is all good to do. Um, if there's anything that where it doesn't feel as important or connected, I'm happy to kind of also consider. We've talked about whether we want to whittle it down, but I've kind of gone with just what we had emerging and figured that we could kind of see if folks saw anything that we might sort of step back from, but um, I don't get the sense that nothing jumping out is not important. Important. Yeah, thanks, Nate. I mean, I think I appreciate that you're fine with it as is, and I think I do feel like the recommendations everyone's given will be helpful to kind of refine this and make it a little more digestible. With that, um, are folks excited to talk about our YDO messaging, aka the elevator pitch? Awesome. Can we go to the next slide, Melissa? Um, at the retreat, I remember specifically Kim Lay brought this up, and there may have been other folks who seconded this. That something that is I think perpetually challenging for us is talking about who we are and what we do, what the council is, what YDO is, um, and there was sort of a request to work on developing some messaging tools, talking points or elevator pitch. We've had a couple of conversations about it among staff. We did a workshop on it at a staff meeting. A small group of us has continued the work, and we wanted to bring back where we're at on this and get more input. So we have some initial ideas and wanted to get reaction from the committee and maybe further develop what we've been working on. So I think the next slide is sort of the general statement as it currently stands. Um, so I'll just read it. YDO invests in young people and partners with communities and systems to reduce disparities and support youth safety and success. Gotten a couple of critiques on this one, which I will not yet name because I want to give folks a chance to kind of read it and come up with your own responses. Jenny got it on the first question. That was exactly what one of the pieces of feedback we got. What would we mean by disparities? Zan, I see your hand up as well.
Yeah, that was one of my questions, because in this context, it could mean a lot of different things, but I also have trouble with the invest in young people and partners with communities and systems. It's just too, there's got to be a better way to say that. I understand what you're going for, but it's clunky.
Yeah, I'll say the reducing disparities. I mean, I could kind of quickly say what we were trying to do was to find a way to say in one sentence everything that everyone in the division and broadly the council and YDO does. And so it is kind of in reference to the reduction in racial and ethnic disparities work that we do on the juvenile justice side. Um, but I think it also we felt like it was connected as well to some of the grant making work, since often our grants are addressing disparities by trying to, provide services that are addressing those, whether it be around graduation, other educational outcomes and disparities therein, or in workforce. But I can see how it's so vague as to not really be clear, particularly in this statement. And then I hear the broader the broader critique as well. Um, Zan, I see your hand still up. Do you have more to say? Oh, okay. I will. I'll kind of just share what we've got in the rest of the slides, and certainly we can come back and talk more. But Nate, go ahead.
Hey there. One thing I was just gonna say too, like something that like I was just looking up to see if it would kind of help support because I've seen it with other elevator pitches. I used to train that a little bit, and the mission lands pretty good for this. Youth Development Oregon align system and invest in. Oh my gosh, never mind. I won't read the whole thing. I'll throw it in the chat because I can't talk today. But I could
I
see
had it
that.
in the slides, I think. I don't know. I can't remember now.
Oh, was it already there? Okay,
Well, it might be like later on. Like I think I had a couple of things in the slides as reference, but I may have cleaned it out. But
I
I'm
got
glad
you.
you brought it up because I was like, I think this. We did check the mission as we were working on this to say, does this still connect with the mission that we have that is adopted in our plan?
If you don't mind me asking, I'm curious, who is the intended audience for this elevator speech? Because I would say, or not speech, statement, like, would that be like, if it's for like a clinician, I would probably word it a little differently than if it's for like a young person specifically. Like, I think we could have multiple different versions of it that I could see just goes from like more complex, so it fits the needs of the provider. And for a young person, I would certainly not go with the more complex one. It was just to the point, simple, and try to make it relevant.
Totally. You have read our minds. I think we could actually, I mean, we've got a couple of things in here. After the general statement, we can skip maybe, if we skip maybe two slides ahead, Melissa, we maybe not quite that far. Are mine out of order? We've got a whole bunch of notes on this because we started talking about all the different audiences we have. And this is maybe an opportunity and maybe a problem, is that I think um, there's probably a need for some adaptation for every different audience. Um, Now, this is all based kind of on that original general statement, which I think can use work and would then probably lead to more tweaks down the line. Um, One of the points you raised, Nate, is that for youth, that general statement is, I think, especially unwieldy. And um, we, in our last conversation, said maybe this is something to go back to the youth committee and say, hey, like, we need your help to really revise this in a way that is um, a little bit more appropriate for youth, particularly those, which are even when we're trying to talk to prospective council members, what is the right message for a young person versus other council prospects. Suzanne's got a
I see. I have a typo in there,
I
but
like it though. It's good. I need to
there's an
actually pull up
extra four in there.
get back to I'm going to pull up my long running notes on this so I can drop that in. So should it be YDO invests in young people, communities, and partners to support safety and success equitably for all youth?
That's what I was trying to say.
Got it.
And I'm assuming um, that family support networks and other systems all fit into communities, that we don't have to explicitly state, all of those things, and some of that can be in follow-up and be in specific examples.
How does that feel for other folks here? Thank you, Nate. I mean, I think the only and this is probably where the specific the audience specific messaging comes in. I mean, one of the things we were struggling with is, the investment side of this, the grant making does kind of extend across, in the juvenile justice side as well as youth grant side. But the work around compliance monitoring, I mean, the juvenile detention guidelines and other work that we do that's really more system focused. How do we sort of capture that? And I don't know if there's a way in this shorter version to kind of, is there a word to insert that helps us to do that? Um, I think that, and maybe there is just the need for two different messages. There's the message that's really around investment and a message around, around the broader system. I don't know what you'd call the systemic work that we do with particularly with, around compliance and justice system related work. I see Brian's note here.
My sense is that uh, if we were to use something like this umbrella statement, there could be bullet points that kind of showed some of the specifics, and that I think the systems related work is another type of investment in supporting safety and success um, for all youth. So it's the word systems, I think, just uh, is hard for a lot of general lay audiences to understand. Um, when you're inside the systems, it makes total sense, but from the outside, not necessarily.
Honestly, I don't. Oh, sorry, Nate Latangio speaking, council member. Um, Something that I was thinking that could be helpful too, and this might just be for like newer council members like myself. I feel like I'm still relatively new, and there's some folks that are newer, but I would be curious like of just listening out like what is it pretty much everything that YDO does, and that can really help influence it. Because like from my understanding, I was like, okay, I don't manage funds, so like if I'm talking to a young person, I'd be like, yeah, essentially what my understanding of youth development organ does is they help like kind of like get different dollars and money into programs that help young people like yourself. Like like one way I would help describe it. But there's more there. But I would be like essentially like I feel like in an elevator pitch, especially like you want to share what's helpful for the person that you're talking to. So you don't necessarily have to share everything that the organization does. Like if I'm talking to a young person, only gonna really share at that time like what's most relevant for them because otherwise they're just gonna tune me out.
Mhm.
And I would imagine that's the same for others as well. They're like, I don't need all that info.
Yeah, so it sounds like really the tailoring of messages. Like if we had it sounds like we want to try to get to maybe I don't know if a menu is the right word, but probably a small set of variations. So we maybe have, I think something specifically. I mean, I know to like juvenile departments as an audience, but I think there's probably juvenile justice partners more broadly as one audience. Um, and then I think I mean we realized that it probably is important to have some language that's specifically related to our work with tribal nations. Um, we wanted to sort of think about also like we continually have to identify ourselves as a state agency among our peers. So there's some of these are sort of based on just well, here's who we kind of see ourselves talking to. Um, but it sounds like we could really differentiate the messages for each audience, and that might be helpful. Um, I think one other thing that we weren't. Oh, hey, Paris, I see your hand.
Yeah, just real quick, I agree with once we land on what the general statement is, that there's some differentiation. I also think in that differentiation, it might be helpful to provide an example for the audience you're talking to. So let's say you say, hey, here's what we do. For example, and really tie it and make the abstract really concrete. Because that is really helpful when we can give an example of some of our grant making, right? Or an example to your point, Cord, on the systems work we do. Um, so I don't know if there's another layer to this later on in the slides, but it might be good in this grid to say, hey, for example, and how it ties to our work more concretely. Because that could help council members adapt when they're talking to a specific audience. Same thing for YDO staff and leadership and so forth.
That I like that layer. That isn't something that we'd actually come up with yet. So I think that's a great suggestion, and we can incorporate that. I think that would be helpful too, particularly like if we were to talk about our work in partnership with the juvenile justice system. Well, but what do you mean by that? Well, we do this, we do that, we do this. One of the things that we weren't sure about, and this is actually in a prior slide, was is there also still a need, or does the council members think it's valuable to have more talking points around differentiating the council and the division? When we've kind of used, I think if the previous slide might have this, Melissa, if you want to jump back one, or maybe one more then. There we go. Yeah, so this is what we've previously presented when we've done like our budget presentations in the legislature and different sort of audiences where we're just trying to give them the baseline of what the entities are and then collectively. This is what we've had. Um, I think maybe I'll start here. Like, does this sort of as a baseline feel like a good way to sort of distinguish the division and council? Cool. Thanks. I saw Zan's thumb and I see Parasa, your comment. Um, if we go back one slide further, I will just share something that we were kind of playing with, which may or may not be helpful, but something that came up in our conversation was um, that to some extent, the council is sort of the strategic layer, even though the division is involved in things like the strategic plan, it's ultimately adopted by the council. And then the division as the staff are the ones who have to, I mean, this might sound a little bit too military or something, but we're the ones who have to do the tactical work of, okay, how do we then make this strategy a reality? And for things like grants and other work, we do it with authority derived from the council. I don't know if this is helpful, but it seemed like another sort of way of thinking about our role together. But if it falls flat, it's something we might just we can take or leave. But we wanted to share it just because it was something we were talking about.
Nate Latanzio, council member. I like it. I think it certainly helps me delineate the two because I was confused a little bit historically. So I think we might be able to like simplify the wording a little bit, but depending on who we're talking to, I think. But overall, I think it helps kind of explain it pretty well.
Hey, Brian, I see your hand.
Brian Duffman, Youth Development Director. I will not trying to confuse things, but I do appreciate that you all are joining us and staff. I know you're all listening. Some staff are listening in, so it's like helpful for you all to be like partnering with us and like, what does this make sense? Does this not? So one thing that's in here, Cord, this last sentence of the middle paragraph, while the Youth Development Division is responsible for tactical execution with authority derived from the council. Sort of. That's sort of true. But I will tell folks not to, you're kind of down in the weeds a little bit with this anyway, but there is a thing that I've been working on, and related to this question of authority. And I think just say this, and then you guys just hear this, and then let it wash over you. Because we at the staff level manage this in ways that you don't. But the Department of Education actually is the the agency that is actually um, has a level of authority and responsibility because just to give you a little peek under, like I don't sign contracts and financial commitments. I don't have that actual fiduciary responsibility the Department of Education does. And they and a lot of the authority that we have at an if you will, at an operational level, actually, and I'll say decision-making level, it happens both because I'm governor appointed, but also because the Department of Education has said, yeah, oh yeah, you guys are independent. You do that. And so some of the I'll say legal operational authority actually comes from ODE. There is a strategic piece, which the YDC is providing to us. But just to give you, just I don't know, just to give you a little peek under the hood, we have we have our own. Some of this is not stuff we need to necessarily talk about, but there's layers from governor and the governor's role as the superintendent of schools to the Oregon Department of Education, a separate governor appointed council, and then a division whose budget is in the Department of Education. So I say that just to give you a sense. Not that this has to work itself into all the stuff, but there's some interesting relationships.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
Brian.
whoever
And Zane, I think
Zan's point is probably best to take out the parenthetical.
yeah, and I dropped in that I was like, I feel like there's some statutory language that probably is also helpful for this. And I think what we have in statute is, I mean, guidance from the council to division, developing policy. I think in the division statutes now, um, it says that the division shall function under and be coordinated by the council with the youth development director serving as, so it's sort of like there's like some vague stuff in statute, and there's I think the specific thing is guidance, which is interesting. We did that. We originally had I think different language, and it was also hard to understand. But I think that guidance, when we last updated statutes, felt like the most appropriate thing because I feel like that kind of reflects what is happening. And I just say with authority, I mean, I was thinking of like grant making authority specifically. Like if our grants are a way that we move the strategic goals of the council forward, we're administering the grants and then, make doing all these processes and grant management and so forth. But we do that under authority that the council holds in statute. So, but yeah, to Brian's point, we we've learned that we can't even do a building use agreement. We've discovered so.
This is Melissa. We should do a quick time check because we're
Oh,
just
thank
about at
you.
the bottom. It's 11:27. So I think we need to wrap up.
Well, I think I'll just say that the feedback that everyone's given me has been really helpful, and I think I'll continue to work on this. And I think at the council meeting we can also share this as part of the strategic plan update. And I think I like Zan. I think that refinement is really helpful, and I think we'll take that back and try to build. I think this menu of different audiences is a good. It sounds like that sounds like the right direction to go in, and we'll continue this work with a more concise starting point, and keep trying to develop things. And certainly, if there's anything useful here already, then the whole goal is just to make it easier for folks to talk about our work. Um, so we had a couple of things left in the slides. We don't really have much time. I don't know whether is anyone here willing and interested in being the chair of this committee. If not, we'll have to rewrite our bylaws to not require committees to have chairs, which is actually a project that we might bring to this committee.
I would nominate the other council members who have participated today. I'm already chair of the council, so I'm happy to nominate any one of the three of you who are interested, but I always like to check in with folks first.
And you can be a co-chair. You don't have to do it alone.
This is Melissa Parsa, having served as chair. I can't remember if you also served as a committee chair before this or not, but do you have any experience that you can share? I know we have like 1 minute left. Anything about what it's like being a chair?
I don't know if I've actually chaired a committee before, but oftentimes when you serve as chair, you have an opportunity to meet with the team ahead of a meeting to co-plan, to check in, to provide guidance. So if you're interested in doing that, and then getting some experience with chairing a committee that does a lot of important work ahead of council meetings. Um, that insight and support to staff is really helpful. Um, and then Brian said it's fun. Yeah, it is fun. Um, and so, okay, Nate might be interested and potentially be interested in co-chairing with somebody. All right.
Is there any council member not here that you think we should try to convince to join this committee and then convince to be a co-chair?
I'd be willing to co-chair with Nate if that's what if he wants to go that route.
So I'm certainly not a subject matter expert on all of these things, but if it's something that if I just get a breakdown of what it would all entail, I'd probably be down.
And you don't need to be a subject matter expert. That's why we work really closely with YDO staff and leadership, right? I think it's always important to ask clarifying questions, right? Check in on progress, because if folks have a question about it, there's often someone else on the council or a member of the public that also has a similar question. So, okay, so Zan and Nate. Potentially, do we need to take a vote on it?
I want to learn more first. Someone send me
Okay,
an email with
Nate's not quite
details
ready
and
yet.
then
Okay.
I
we'll
will,
see what's up.
I mean, hopefully, Zan, you would agree, having been a co-chair of a committee that I was the staff liaison for, that I try to make it very easy. And I think probably what I would do, what would have happened differently with this particular meeting is that for our next meeting, I would just reach out to the co-chairs and say, hey, we're getting ready for the meeting. Can we look at the agenda and presentation together? And then you can give me feedback, say this is too many this or that, or change this, and then it's an even better meeting when you co-chair it. I can follow up with you about that. And we have a proposed meeting date so that we don't have to keep polling you. We were going to suggest this particular, like this sort of, I think it's the fourth Thursday of the month before the council meets. Since this turned out to be the date and time that worked for everyone, can we do this again in 3 months? And Melissa, I think you have that date and time if you want to share it, and folks can let us know if it works.
Right. I think we were looking at Thursday, May 28th. I don't have that on our calendars exactly, but so that would be 10, and if 10:30 a.m. works. For that day, I'm looking, I'm seeing thumbs up. Okay. Two thumbs up. Awesome. Three thumbs.
Amazing. I see like thumbs flying. So
Yeah, thumbs are flying. This is fantastic. Thanks, everybody.
well, this is perfect. We are over time, so I would then offer it to one of our prospective co-chairs to adjourn us.
I will adjourn us since I opened the meeting. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much,
Thank
everybody.
you all.
Thanks everyone so much.
Take care.